will never defeat me! And at the end of days...
Today's game is Diablo 3, the Eternal Collection on the Nintendo Switch. Saying the Diablo franchise is a fan favorite would be quite the understatement. And despite the third entry getting some mixed feedback on release, after some patches and a full expansion, it remains a strong ARPG experience. But is the Nintendo Switch Eternal Collection worth picking up for your collection? Let's take a look. Diablo 3's story follows your character, the Nephilim, as you ravage undead and demonic forces and make your way towards stopping the evil entities from obtaining ultimate power and, big spoiler here, put a stop to Diablo. It's the title of the game, come on. The story in these games is honestly not bad if you do care to pay attention, and the CGI cutscenes are fantastic, meeting the expected Blizzard standard. It's a good time, but it's also very skippable if you just want to bathe in the hordes of enemies and the mountains of loot that these games are known for. Let's move on to the game's presentation now, but before we do, if you have any fond memories of Diablo 3 or any suggestions for other games you'd like to see featured, just drop it in a comment below. Diablo 3 is a fairly solid looking game. It's good enough. And frankly, in these kind of isometric style ARPG games, I give a bit of leeway on graphical detail. Just because unlike a fully 3D first or third person game, I think the zoomed out perspective is a bit more forgiving of compromises. Blizzard advertised this game as being rendered at a 960p resolution when it's in docked mode, which is super close to 1080p, but the shipped version seems to cap at 900p, with dynamic resolution dips into the mid-700s in demanding scenes. And you do notice it when this happens. The game has a mild fuzziness to it, a little aliasing on the characters, etc. Handheld mode caps at the native 720p as expected, but also dynamically dips the resolution down to the mid-500s, but again, only in heavy scenes. Some of the lighting and shadow effects present in versions for consoles like the PS4 are absent or greatly reduced here, such as bloom around lights and ambient occlusion. But again, these are sacrifices that feel very reasonable, given the still decent looking end result, and the strict attention to detail they gave to performance targets, which we'll discuss in a second. Audio is great here, no issues to report. The voice acting was all ported over and left as is, and the soundtrack is great. No complaints, it's all here. Diablo's gameplay is a real treat. The addictive loop of farming hordes of monsters and increasingly menacing bosses to pop them like loot pinatas, swimming in loot drops as you tear through dungeons, always on the hunt for better and better gear. It's as intoxicating as always, and the short missions and 10 to 20 minute dungeon bursts are literally perfect when paired with the handheld nature of the Switch. This shit is fun, and it's a bold statement, but this may be the definitive way to play Diablo 3. Its slightly more arcadey style of gameplay just works well with the controller inputs on the handheld console, and the radial menus don't feel as terrible as you may infer at a glance. You can play the game with up to 4 players via either local co-op or online matchmaking, and both operate flawlessly from the reports that I read, though I did not test them myself. That said, it's likely the best way to experience the game. Complementary character builds and a party of friends is sick. For veterans of the genre, hardcore mode, seasons, and well over a dozen difficulty levels are present here, as well as some Switch-exclusive content and some additional game modes to flesh it out a bit more. Combat is a highlight of all ARPGs, and it's awesome here. Your character ascends towards a feeling of godhood as you obtain new abilities and continue to progress through the game, customizing your skill loadouts and runes to tailor your build towards whatever you feel is the best way to mow down wave after wave of the minions the game throws at you. Again, it's an addictive loop to go from the slow grind of bonking monsters with a mallet at the beginning to unleashing storms of lightning on entire screens of enemies, decimating them with your power, or turning into a human buzzsaw and tearing through hordes of demonic monsters like they're paper. It's very fun. I'm so very happy to report that all of the minor compromises we discussed earlier were all for this right here. A locked 60 frames per second 100% of the time, in my experience. No stutters, no hitching, no lag, no slowdown, a perfect locked 60, which, considering the genre and the frustrations that lag causes in endgame content, particularly if you're playing on a hardcore character, it's not a problem here. It looks like the guys over at Digital Foundry were able to create an absurd endgame scenario with a ton going on screen, where they were able to get the game to dip down to 45 frames per second, but no stuttering, no hitching. And honestly, it's unlikely you're going to encounter something like this. Performance is a huge win on this one. This may be the very best version of Diablo 3 that we'll ever get. The nature of the game lends itself perfectly to handheld play, making the addictive loops more accessible than ever. And the fact that this Eternal Collection has all of the content ever released for the game, including the expansions, DLCs, the new character classes, and all the years of patches and updates, it serves as a complete package for those looking to either dive back in or check it out for the first time. All of this is now obtainable in 2025 for around $20 to $25, at least here in the US, and it's likely just as cheap in PAL regions. Definitely scoop this one up if you've been wanting to revisit this classic title, or like me if you're looking to get into this one for the first time, or even a good starting place for the genre. This handheld format really is a game changer. If you like this video, consider subscribing, and stay tuned for more.